Welcome back to Weekend Walkabout, where we're in our gardens and years virtually.
We're coming to you from GardenAtoZ.org. Our main topic, filling gaps and replacing plants. I'm Stephen.
And I'm Janet. And with us is our daughter, Sonia Nicola, who is running the chat and handling technical questions. We're the professional gardeners and writers and photographers. We've been doing this for 40 years, and Sonia has all of her life been in the garden and is currently a professor at the University of Toronto and very well versed in technology as well as gardening. So if you've got a question for us, put it into the chat, and Sonia will line it up for us for one of our question and answer sessions. And we learn from question and answer sessions, so we want your questions, even if we can't get to all of them in the webinar.
Yep.
If there are some stacked up and left, I can write a transcript. Steve might even be able to illustrate that transcript this year. We have so many different kinds of weeds we can show pictures of. But when we get a question from somebody, we learn from that question. We learn either by looking for an answer, or we learn simply that possibility exists, that the situation is different in different places. And we've written about that for over 30 years now. We've put as many of our articles as we can, and we keep putting more onto our GardenAtoZ.org. Our intention is to not have to write the article twice, so we can keep on learning new things. We have a note-taking guide today for this portion of the webinar. It's if you go to GardenAtoZ.org and the webinars tab, you'll find an audience materials where you can click to this outline. And if you look in the chat, there's a link to it in the chat. All right, starting off with why we're even doing this, because this was this week in our garden, is looking at things that lost. The first thing we do is go, why didn't that make it?
Which we showed you a little bit of a toad lily last week, but that was last week.
Yeah, this is a penstemon. I divided a penstemon into 5 pieces last fall. I think it was last fall. It may have been December. I only remember thinking that the neighbors were going to think that woman is crazy crawling around in their garden in the wintertime. But the weather was settled. I had time. So I took one of our penstemons that we're trying to propagate and get more of out in our native area, and I divided it into 5 pieces, and it should have made it. So I've taken the remains out to take a look and see what happened. The roots did not rot. There's no soft spots or broken off pieces of the roots. Were fine. The crown did not rot.
It didn't get chewed on.
Yeah. And so I think they dried out. I think it was dry. I think it was warm and nice in December, and penstemon, the crown is nearly evergreen. So the crown was losing water through the whole time, and that probably killed it, which says to me that, well, I can do penstemon again, and maybe I shouldn't transplant penstemon so late. It's not a for sure, but it's something that we look for all the time. We found mechanical damage last week. When we talked about the little fox squirrel, little red squirrel that was underneath the plant. Destroying our toad lily. But we look around too for whether there are problems with maybe the plants next door have leaned on the plant. We lost a beautiful little dwarf fir. I looked out one day in September. Well, what is that brown thing out there? Oh my gosh. It's that very expensive dwarf fir that we bought has been smothered by perennials.
That we lost track of.
If you look around, there might be evidence of soil issues. This is a group that met me at the Waterford Library for one of our work bees. And we're looking at the fact that Pussy's Toes is not doing very well in that corner. It does well in the beds behind us, beyond where you can see. But we're looking there and realizing that the soil is also eroding out of that bed. It's down in the corner.
You can see where it's dropped.
And right next to there is the entrance to our rain garden to take the water off of the patio and down into the drain. So we suspect that water is sitting there when the drain gets backed up and making it too wet for those to live, and may also be affecting these on the side, just in the bed. We've just moved to the bed to the right with a little tree in it. And those plants, there are a group of 3 of them in the foreground and 3 of them out back, are not supposed to be yellow like the group that's by the purple bucket. The group that's by the purple bucket is a gold-leafed centaurea.
Supposed to be yellow.
Right. The others are not supposed to be yellow. They are stackies, and they're supposed to be that green that you see on the blooming big betony. And so these 2 may be responding to too much water. And you need to look at those things because it's the whole environment that tells you what's going on with the plant. It could even be a microclimate for just that plant. We have a hellebore in a garden. It's just around the corner from 2 other hellebores, and it barely blooms. And it's because the wind screams through between our house and the hedge next to the house and really scours that area. If you're out there when the wind is there, you can realize it's there and think about what it does in the wintertime to the plants. And admit that there are mysteries. There's sometimes you go, I don't know. Just
I say that a lot.
yeah, we do. And just remember, no blame, no guilt. Maybe timing was wrong in my case with the penstemon, but I did it when I had the time. Who's in charge in this garden here? And even the best gardeners, and probably especially the best gardeners, lose things.
The best gardeners are the ones that go like Nancy, going to work, taking the chance and working on her Japanese maple roots.
Right. It's either going to make it well or it's not going to make it.
But she's a good gardener. We know that.
One of the best gardeners in the country that we know, I think it was Tony Avent, it might have been Bob Stewart. One of them said we should all wear shirts that proclaim how many plants we've killed. That would be the true badge of a gardener. Well, at the same time, or just before I transplanted those penstemons,
I went twice.
Stephen, stop clicking. At the same time that I transplanted those penstemons that didn't make it, I divided and moved that penstemon you see on the bottom, and that's the same day picture. Me taking apart the ones that died and those that didn't. Now, the ones that didn't were down in the ditch. They were down just below the crest.
10 inches, 12 inches lower, if that.
And so maybe they didn't get the wind and the drying out that the others did.
The slope
Can't tell.
allowed more moisture to go down.
But I'm not going to beat myself up or anybody else. I do like to hear about it from people, though, what's happened. Our wonderful Ascot rainbow euphorbia Ascot rainbow, which we
for 2 years.
Did so well for 2 years. It didn't come back this year. And I thought, well, maybe the winter killed it. Maybe I killed it, because I decided to cut it back this time rather than
leave it protected.
This is an Ascot rainbow that we put in Peggy's garden. And she said, oh, it's coming up weak. But now that I'm watering it, yes, it is coming. And it's coming from the bases of the branches.
Yeah.
So not the winter, maybe the winter was a little hard on it, but maybe my cutting back was even harder, especially in a hard winter. And that's the way we learn, is we keep trying. So we have a new Ascot rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to try it again.
We only lost it once. That's not enough
That's
yet.
not enough times to lose it to know that we can't.
Especially if we love, for 2 years, the plant performed.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah. And sometimes we get to talking about, maybe we should have started with something bigger. I'm always of the mind that the smaller one is going to adapt more quickly. Will the killing circumstances happen again? With the weather the way that it's been, there's no normal anymore. So who knows what's going to happen with the weather, but we try 2 or 3 times. We will have in our yard, it is a right place for a pagoda dogwood. That's our native alternate leaf dogwood. And we will have the variegated one.
We will have one of them.
I think we've tried 3 so far.
I think we're up to 4.
Up to 4?
Well, we bought 2 at one time and lost them both.
So
that's 3 times.
And once we lost it to squirrels, and that doesn't count. You can't count squirrels, stupid squirrels. We've been protecting them from the squirrels ever since, but we lost another one to Solomon seal. Now that might sound like a lot, but these are expensive plants and they were only this tall, and something that's 12 inches tall hanging over it can shade it right out.
Right out.
So
you don't pay enough close attention when you planted it.
Yeah. Or when you're walking around the garden, you need to give things room to grow. So we probably are going to find a way to afford a bigger one,
a slightly bigger one,
and then all the leaves will fall off because we'll take the roots apart. But we will take the roots apart. Okay, so first figure out anything you can about why it died, so that you don't repeat anything you don't have to repeat, and then we go into the choosing replacements, which is fun for us.
Yeah.
We do it together, and it starts with right plant, right place. Of course, you need to match the plant to the growing circumstances that you have, and listen to what the plants tell you. Steve said, ooh, primula, what about primula? I said, I would love to grow primula, but we are a dry garden, and there are very, very few primulas that can handle being in a dry garden. They need a moist, rich soil. Yeah. We're better off with epimediums, barren wort, well named for growing in places where other things don't. Wort means plant, barren means grows where other things don't grow.
It's a pretty plant. Or
So we put things out and we put them out small, started with small Pulsatilla vulgaris.
Like
I hoped that they would make it because I love the plant. And not only have they bulked up and grown very well, but they are seeding themselves
They're
rapidly. all
doing what
around.
we want. They're
Yeah.
self-seeding, so we'll have lots of different varieties
In our
and
native-
colors.
in our native area. So pay attention to what the plants tell you. We talked about this last week and being excited when you get 3 stalks instead of 2.
Mhm.
So make sure it's in the right place. And then, are you looking for a star? Did you lose a star like our Ascot rainbow, or was it a chorus line? Our penstemons are chorus line plants.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of
But
them
yet
out
I
there.
love them like a star.
Yeah. Because if it's a star, then I'm looking for contrast. I'm looking for a replacement, if it's not the same thing, that will contrast with the things around it and continue to stand out, which goes back to all of those different design things that we always talk about: the form, the texture, the foliage color, the bloom
Bloom
color.
time, yeah.
So the dwarf, this is a hybrid dwarf goat's beard. The true dwarf goat's beard is much tinier and
Cuter.
finer than this. But it's still fine in texture to where as I step away from it, more than a couple steps away, it becomes one solid mass, and it's rounded. And is more fine than the Astrantia masterwort, is also a rounded plant. There's 3 of them there, but it's more coarse. I can still see individual bits of dark and light leaf and section of leaf as I move away from it. So I can go with more coarse textured plants to stand out next to fine plants like the grass behind the Astrantia or like the goat's beard. And it texture works with everything, and foliage color works. So the golden satin grass
With the
also,
heucheras.
yeah, it's a low contrast between it and the amber colored heucheras next to it, but next to the green leafed coarse textured ginger would be there would be more contrast. And there are people who say, well, you can't equate an iris and a pulmonaria, but if you look at these and you're just looking and walking by, that's the same texture, it's the same kind of shape. That's Iris cristata, the crested iris that grows in the woods and makes a really neat little ground cover, and pulmonaria. So we're looking for things that either are going to blend in because you want them to blend in and be part of a harmonious group,
Mhm.
or whether you want somebody to stand out. And so maybe if you've got a bunch of mounded plants, you're looking for something more upright.
Vertical,
Yeah.
V-shape
A
maybe.
Clump of Chamacia coming up this time of year. A lot of plants are mounded, even plants that are going to be upright
Yeah.
and columnar the rest of the year. And so the bulbs stand out like Chamacia does there, or Amsonia does with its more vertical aspect. And you don't want to blend in to where it's a non-entity. This doesn't show here to the camera like it does to the eye, but the purple leafed coral bells quite often disappear into the shade and the mulch in a garden,
Mhm.
in a shaded garden. You don't see them at all. So you're looking for something that stands out to a certain degree, but not overwhelming if you're looking for a chorus type plant. And for a star, you're just looking for it to be a contrast with what else you have there. Then we think about size.
Be realistic, think about it.
Yeah, because number one, plants aren't immediately going to be their mature size. You might read in a book or hear from somebody. We were talking with Sonia this week, or texting with Sonia about Baptisia. And yes, Baptisia is going to be 5 feet tall, and it's going to be 5 feet across, and it's going to be a monster in your garden, but not right away. It's going to take a little while to do that. And neighboring plants where you're looking to fill a gap often look small this time of year,
Mhm.
and they are not small. So we tell people, note whose roots you dig into as you plant new, because where the perennials roots go this year,
Chances are the foliage is
that's where the
following.
foliage is going to go. So these are ghost fern. It's a cross between the Japanese painted fern and the southern lady fern. And it's an upright clump forming fern, my kind of fern,
And pretty.
with a light colored foliage. It's a variety called Ghost. And it's going to take a while to bulk up like that. This is Aurelia Sun King, and they're just starting out. This is right now in the beginning of the year. They're just starting out, but they can easily be 4 or 5 feet tall and around like a small shrub. But that doesn't happen in year 1.
No, might not happen in year 2 in our yard.
Right, yeah. If you want to keep it for the gold foliage and let it be small for a while, you can, but you have to think about giving it room in the long run. So I'm looking at our prairie drop seed. That's prairie drop seed, clumps of prairie drop seed grass. and some of the penstemons in our native area, and thinking, oh, there's room for things, but there's not room for things. I decided to put one of our new penstemons. This is a penstemon small EI. I'm pretty sure this one is a small EI.
He's a short little guy.
No. This is a Barbados. It's
Oh,
a
you
rock
can see it.
candy.
Okay.
But I'm putting him in between, kind of offset and between two of those prairie drop seeds. And as I dig to put him in, and that drop seed is right there, already the leaves are almost touching. And where I dug, there's the soil that I dug up, and look in the soil. The roots that I dug out are from the purple coneflower to the right and the grass to the left. So this space is taken. Our new plant is not going to have as much chance as those established plants are. So maybe I want to shoehorn something in, but try to shoehorn something in where it has a chance to get growing. And don't forget your gardening objectives, whatever it is that the garden is meant to be. If you're trying to reduce the time you have to spend taking care of a garden,
Yes.
then make sure you don't overload yourself with a needy plant.
And don't pick a one that needs a lot of expertise to take care of.
Right, because then you're the only one who can ever do anything for it. And if you're looking for scent or for fruit, or for cut flowers or for pollinator value, make sure that as you put in a new plant that you're asking it to do that. We like the penstemons because we like their looks. We like the fact that they're native and belong here. The hummingbirds like them. And there are a great number of species that we can put out there together and let them interbreed.
Yeah.
So we have been very happy this year. This is the first year now that we look down on the ground where we do not mulch heavily if we can. We mulch heavily to get the bed started, but we don't keep adding more and more mulch on top. We do some weeding. And so we have bare soil, good for the bees and good for the penstemon seedlings. Those are seedlings from our penstemon, and those have got mothers and fathers from all over the garden. Yep. And already looking at the seedlings coming up, see the difference in the amount of red in the leaf. So those are going to be different creatures. We'll take some of those up and split them up and grow them on in pots and decide which ones we're going to keep. And whether we decide or not, others will come up on their own, because that's the objective of the garden.
Yep.
So we kind of get an idea what we might want to put there. And if it's new to us, we go see the plant growing somewhere.
Find it in the garden, go to public gardens, go to botanic gardens, find it where it's growing. And also if you could ask about its history, what has it done? How long has it been there? Yeah, you learn a lot.
Yeah. This week we went to Michigan State University's demonstration gardens. We started out in the Jalapa perennial garden and went through the perennials, the roses, the annual area, the vines, and then over into the landscape arboretum through the fruit and the Japanese garden, the English garden. We were looking for ideas. We didn't have particular plants in mind that we wanted to see. We were looking for ideas. So we walked through the area, and in a big botanical garden, there are so many kinds of plants, and it's the only place where I'm very glad for tags.
Yes.
Even though they are kind of in the way
headstones.
Headstones on the garden. But where you can walk and look and say, yes, that plant has the bulk or the mass or the texture or the color that I like. And I spent too much time walking around out in the sun when the two places that we were most looking to fill in our garden
were shady.
Yeah, we had 3 places to fill, and 2 of them were shady. So I said, get yourself over into the shade, Janet, over there underneath the oak trees and the birch trees. See over there? And over there happened to be a couple gardeners working who might be able to tell us how long have these baptisia been there to be this size. That's the kind of history that you want to know. Or do you have any particular problems with them? This, by the way, is a garden that I think I just want to clear that.
Oh.
No, nothing there. Because it's right where it'll look. There you go. This garden in the shade.
Whoops.
Might look familiar to some of you, at least by its shape. This is the garden that was a full sun garden.
Full sun.
25 years ago when we wrote the book Caring for Perennials, and took care of this bed for a full year in order to illustrate the kinds of things that you do for maintenance in the garden. And it's very, very neat to come back to that bed, to that bench where Sonia sat and kept notes for us back all those years ago. And to look for, now that we're growing in the shade, for shade plants that we can
Get some
adopt and take
combinations.
home. Garden tours are another good place to go. I'm always very grateful to people who will open their gardens to the public, because it's a scary thing to do, to have that many people walk through and poke around in your garden. And then you can walk around with other people and see cool plants that people have worked very hard to make look their best for you. So what questions do we have while we enjoy Shelley's pollinator garden pictures?
Yeah, and in fact, Shelley just says she thinks it's Thursday, June 16th. So Wednesday the 8th, and then Thursday the 16th.
That's right. It's right when the
Yeah.
kids get out of school. Thursday, June 16th. Thank you.
Karen wants to know, which close-up lens will you take to Math Eye?
I have a Nikon Z7 camera and or a Nikon D90, and I will have a 105 macro lens on one of those two cameras. I'm not sure which one yet, because of the weight. I might be carrying both cameras because
Sometimes I carry the camera for him, and sometimes I can't stick by his side closely enough for his liking.
and I'm still looking for a backpack that I like.
Yeah.
So
I used to sit on benches and take notes, and I definitely used to be the camera Sherpa. Okay, we actually don't have too many questions so far. Pam says that she lost a pagoda dogwood. She dug it up and there were no roots. Any idea what might have happened there?
Yeah,
voles.
voles.
Mhm.
The meadow mice with pagoda, all of the dogwoods are quite edible, and
Yeah.
and voles can be very bad some years. I'm not sure how you keep them off of the roots.
And on that topic, good news. Connie says that FYI, the Retree Facebook page just posted pictures of the dogwood tree journey to her place. She can't say enough about those people.
Oh, that's
Well, good.
great.
Glad to hear that.
Good. We are very glad to hear that we've found somebody else who cares about trees like we do.
Yep.
Retree.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and I think that's actually where we're at for questions at the moment. A lot of people are expressing that they're glad to hear about everyone else killing plants. They feel less alone.
Okay. And if you want to feel even more in company with plant killers, then just come and talk with us on one of our walks. We can probably point out several dozen plants that we've known and killed.
Oh, and actually one just came in from Ruth. What could be used in drainage ditches? That's not, not maybe a replacement, but I imagine almost anything else you plant there would fail. So what could you that would have success in a drainage ditch?
Those are our rain garden plants and drainage ditches, and at the Waterford Township Library, where we'll be on June, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 8. June 8th or 9th, the second Wednesday in June, we'll be there again, and you're welcome to come and see 25 species that grow well in an
occasional flood area.
Occasionally flooded area. And it's a good test place because it's one that it sometimes dry and sometimes soak and wet, and we've had to adjust plants in order to get things that do that very well. Two of our best out there so far are the Filipendula hexapetala, called meadow sweet, and hibiscus, and blue-eyed grass.
Elizabeth was also just asking, putting soil over the tree shoulders is not good, but what about putting mulch over the shoulders?
No.
No mulch against the trunk. If it's just, there's a flare at the base of the trunk, so it should get wider and come out. If there's mulch sitting on part of the slope of the flare, that's not a big deal, but mulch against the trunk is not a good idea.
Not good at all.
Yeah, it tends to encourage adventitious roots and rot.
Here we do actually have a replacing question. Mary Lou says her 9 bark is half dead on the bottom half. Should she just prune it down, or should she replace it? It might be from the extra iron water that happened last year when they dug a new well that's 10 foot deeper. The water is now extra iron rich.
I'm not sure that extra iron would do that to 9 bark. They're native, and we've got a lot of iron, like in the Upper Peninsula. They're native all along the streams, and some of those streams are copper colored. They run so much iron. But I have seen 9 barks with a lot of dieback from the base as they begin to girdle themselves. If it has not been in for more than, if it's something that's less than 10 years old, I'd be very tempted to cut out what's dead all the way to the bottom and crawl underneath it and take a good look to see if there are roots or its own trunks wrapped around each other. I took a mock orange out that had been in 3 years, 4 years. That it looked okay, bloomed, then it looked scraggly. I said, well, I don't like you here.
Yep.
So I took it out, and when I took it out and looked at it, for crying out loud, there were 3 trunks, and the trunks were wrapped all around each other. I separated them, planted them out separately, gave one to somebody. 2 of them are still sitting here, and it took them 2 years to recover from being wrapped around
Yep.
each other. And they're shrubs. You would think that's different than a tree. It's not different than a tree.
Okay, all right. I think we can probably move on.
Let's move on. Okay, we're gonna call that a stretch. Call this a stretch break now and come back shortly with part 2 of filling gaps. Stick with us at gardenaz.org.